Hi guys, welcome to English with Erkin YouTube channel. I'm Erkin. In today's video, we are going to talk about language learning with a polyglot who speaks 13 languages. Stay with me. Hi Iskandar, it's good to see you.
Hello, Erkin Can. Good to see you too. How are you?
I'm good, how are you?
I'm well, yeah. Despite the situation,
Iskandar is a language enthusiast. Iskandar is a friend of mine. And to me, however, Iskandar is the real definition of a polyglot. So for those who don't know you, maybe, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself, Iskandar?
Yeah, sure. I'm from China. I was born in China. I'm from the Hui ethnic minority and, or as the Uyghurs say, Dungan. I left China when I was a teenager. I finished school in Australia, came here for the UK for university, and went to Paris for a year for Erasmus exchange. Came back to the UK and have been in the UK ever since. I'm now doing an MA in Iranian Studies at SOAS, School of Oriental and African Studies of University of London, for those who don't know SOAS. So, yeah.
It's an impressive life experience already. So at the same time, that tells us 4 different languages, right? Mandarin, English, French, and Persian.
Yes.
So how many languages do you speak and what are they?
Well, how many do I speak? It's always a tricky question because there are languages which I know quite well, but I don't necessarily speak. So I'd say that on top of the 4 that you just counted, I speak Turkish quite well. And I use it very often as well. To a slightly lesser extent, I speak Portuguese, Greek, Arabic, and Urdu. I do know Russian. My Russian is not fluent, but I'm fluent when I'm reading. And German is the same story, and in Kurdish is the same story as well. Like I've started learning other languages like Armenian and Gujarati, which I haven't reached a decent level yet.
So impressive. So when I first met Iskandar, that was 5 or 6 years ago in Paris at Dilnors, right? And I was so intimidated by your language skills.
Oh, I forgot to count Uyghur as well, which I speak very well, but I understand very well.
Yes, you do. So according to the researchers, according to the science, a foreign language you speak forms the way you think. So to what extent do you agree with that?
I agree, because different languages have different syntactic structures. If you compare, let's say, Turkic syntactic structure and Indo-European, let's say, English syntactic structure, you see 2 different ways of giving information. In English, you would say the man killed a millionaire who had, I don't know, £5 million in the bank. The
subject, verb and the
object, and then what modifies the millionaire would come after the millionaire. Whereas in Turkic, it would be considered completely different. So the information of killing would come at the end of the sentence. And, this creates different ways of creating suspense in such a literary genre. So, yeah, it must be. And also, for example, some languages have concepts that other languages don't. I've heard that, I don't speak Welsh, but I've heard that in Welsh, the colour blue and the colour green are the same. So, like, they've got one word for green.
There's only one word for both blue and green.
Yes. It doesn't really mean that they can't tell the difference. Language produces how your brain perceives things, right? So, I don't know, if you feel the need to elaborate differences between 2 things that are perceived to be similar, that says something. That says something about the process of your thinking if you're a speaker of this particular language. So yes, I do think that languages shape the way you think.
Definitely. And also, for example, here in Europe, in so many European languages, there is such a thing called a gender for the object. Exactly. In French, for example, there is no in the middle. It's either masculine or feminine. Exactly. If you ask a French person and a German person to describe a car, they will not describe the same thing the same way.
Yeah, exactly.
So couple of days ago, I talked about our interview on my Instagram story to my audience. I asked them to ask us some questions, like language learning related questions, any questions. So I received so many questions on Instagram. Iskandar and I, we picked 4 or 5 questions over here. We're going to try to answer you guys together. This is from NNJM16. Nimishqa til seviye o'smayotgandek bir xil holatda turib qoldi. That basically means why there is always such a feeling that you are not progressing anymore when you are learning a foreign language.
As much as it's difficult to believe, it happens to everyone. It happens to everyone. I mean, researchers in language acquisition, second language acquisition, have called it the plateau of language learning. So you hit the plateau and you find it very difficult to. It's very natural, you know. When you first start learning a language, you clearly that there's visible progress. Once you have absorbed that language into your system, it becomes more difficult to notice the progress, even though you are still progressing. Imagine a container, which is an inverted, let's say, pyramid, and you pour water at a consistent rate, right? You will notice that the bottom gets filled up very quickly. The more up you go, the slower the changes. So language learning is like that. So just be patient. Don't get frustrated with yourself. As long as you're using the language you're learning, you are progressing. So don't worry.
Thank you very much. Next question is from Yasin with 3 eyes, 1205. Bir tilni g'oyaga yetkazib bo'lib yangi tilga o'tish kerakmi yoki chalib tilliq bo'lish kerakmi? So would you recommend to learn one language and being fluent in it until you start another language, or it's okay to start like learning several languages?
It's really up to you. I would say that it's more okay to do it if the languages you're learning are very different from each other. But if the languages you're learning are very similar to each other, let's say if you try to learn Spanish and Italian together,
or German,
there will be a problem at the start where these two languages will, or three, will interfere with each other. As a beginner, you can be very easily confused. Even if you're learning languages which are very different from each other, at a certain level, let's say at an intermediate level, you focus on one for a few months, and then the next few months you focus on the other. But at the start, you can start them together, in my experience.
I do agree with you. So if you are studying completely different languages, just go for it. But if you are learning several languages that are really similar, try avoid that.
Yes.
Okay. Next question is from _Habiba_0998. I've been always seeking advice about how to upgrade from middle level to advanced level. I think she meant in learning English.
First of all, I think everyone should realize that there isn't any shortcut.
You just have to be patient.
In language learning, you just have to be patient. You have to keep a steady input of your target language. How do you progress from intermediate to advanced? The more input you have, the faster you're going to reach your goal. By input, I mean, you know, how much you read in this language, you listen to materials in this language, how often you communicate with other people in this language. You know, the more you do that, the faster.
If you want to upgrade your level from intermediate to advanced, the key here is to practice some more. You learned all the basic grammar and stuff. You just have to practice more. And
practice makes.
So next question is from Kamil John with 3 O's. En tez sözlük yadlash usulü, the fastest way to remember the vocabulary. This is specifically for vocabulary. People always ask me, how can I improve my English in 2 weeks? Or how can I be fluent in English in a really short time?
Don't believe in, become fluent in, 3 months or things like that.
On YouTube, especially if you search for learning English, there's always this kind of videos like, as you said, like grammar in 30 minutes or being fluent in 2. It's not true. It's not scientific. To me, learning a foreign language is to get used to a whole new.
Exactly.
Yeah. Getting used to a whole new way of expressing things.
It's to develop a habit. It's to.
It takes a long time. You have to be patient, and also your brain has to be trained for these new habits.
Exactly.
So it's a long time. It's normal. You just have to be patient. Just have to practice more. And what do you think?
Well, first thing I have to say is that language, as you said, is a habit. Language is to get exposed to the vocabulary in your daily life. Very difficult for you to retain the vocabulary if you have just memorized it from a list. Even if you have very good memory, you memorize the lists, vocab lists, you won't be able to use the words. You have words come in context. Read more, listen more. That's how you memorize vocabulary.
Okay, you are not much for memorizing the vocabulary.
Context is the best.
It's very important. Okay, so last question here. Actually, I got 3 questions really similar. Yasin Neuf said, how can I lost my lazy feeling for learning fourth language? He meant like, how can I get rid of this like laziness, right?
Yeah.
Next one is from _Habiba_0998. Again, I found it really difficult to remotivate yourself. Zainab_Aydin. The beginning is always the hardest. So how to motivate yourself during that period of time?
Right. Questions about motivation.
So the key here is to be more aware of why did you start learning that language? Is that your natural interest, or your boss asking you to learn this language? Exactly. Or is that for some specific academic reason?
Exactly.
Or
you like the culture and everything, And also motivation, I would say, depends on how much, to what extent this language is a part of your life. A staunch fan of this football player or a film star or novelist and something, that if you use this language every day in your life, it's very unlikely you are going to lose motivation, because this language has become part of your life.
Yeah. So what's important is to make it a part of your life and try to find the enjoyment to motivate yourself.
Language is not mathematics. It's not physics. It's some. You should approach language learning in the same way as you approach learning how to ride a bike or how to drive a car.
Speaking of like that example, I actually learned driving in real life. When I was at the driving school, I really learned like traffic rules and that basic stuff. And the real skills, I actually learned how to drive, to be a good driver.
By driving. I completely agree. You will get better and better at this language if you relax, if you treat it as part of your life. If language learning should be fun. It should be you should use it. You should use your target language as much as possible. You should integrate this language and the culture that it represents your life. Nothing to do with I don't think language learning has anything to do with intelligence. Maybe, but only to a certain extent, especially in pronunciation. Some people are very good at imitating sounds. That's it.
Definitely. Yeah. That's some really good advice from Iskandar. Those are the questions from our audience, from our followers. And I got this last question for Iskandar. I think this can also be a really good tips for those language lovers. From your personal experience, language learning experience, let's say tomorrow you're gonna learn a new language for some reason. What's your thing? What's your habit? How do you start?
Well, I'm always looking for new languages to learn, so like I'm quite used to this. I would first actually I'm a textbook learner. I would actually buy a textbook from the internet or like from the bookshop and start from hello, how are you, that sort of thing. And then the next thing I would do would be search for music in this language, because I love music. If it's got good songs, I will start listening to the songs immediately and then absorb the language through listening to the songs. TV shows, I don't know, films and things like that. Use that cultural aspect. Like, what do you think?
So at the beginning, you have to, obviously you need some workbook for the basics alphabet. Let's say it depends on the language. So then my thing is just not afraid of making mistakes. I personally, I don't care making mistakes. I can make 200 mistakes and I don't care. I learn much better through my mistakes. So do not afraid of making mistakes. Just believe in yourself. Okay, you have to be confident and you have to practice.
But I am exactly the opposite. I'm very afraid of making mistakes. So initially I was just like sitting in my corner reading grammar books and textbooks, and then when I feel confident enough, I'll go out to. But then I will still make mistakes. That's the thing. If you don't practice, you make mistakes. Making mistakes is okay. It doesn't really mean anything, as I said.
It doesn't mean you're a horrible person, or it doesn't mean
you're unintelligent. It just means that you lack practice. So practice more.
That's been fun. A really good discussion with you. I think my audience, our followers, got some really good tips from our interview. It's going to be useful for them. So thank you so much for your time today, and looking forward to our next collaboration.
Hopefully, yeah, me too.
Bye.
Bye.